Hi everyone, welcome to this week's homework video. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so you might remember a couple of weeks ago we reminded ourselves about how to add, subtract, multiply and divide fractions. Okay, it takes a bit of practice, but it's definitely something that's very, very useful. It's something you need to be able to do. Okay, so it doesn't matter how much practice it takes, make sure you can do it, alright? So on the screen we have got the instructions into solving, adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay, so if you do forget, we can read through these instructions, and these instructions are going to be on every screen. Now you'll notice that if you look at multiplying fractions, the instructions are very short, and if you look at this dividing fractions, it's the same. They're very, very short, and that's because they're very easy. Multiplying and dividing fractions are super, super easy, but adding and subtracting fractions can be a bit more difficult. Okay, now what I won't do is I won't read through all of these instructions right now, but we will go through them one at a time. Okay, now I'm only going to give you one example because we've done many examples, but I think that's all it will take to jog your memory if you've forgotten. Okay, so how to add fractions. Now, let's make up a fractions question on the spot. Let's say we've got, let's go for 2/7, so 2/7, and we're adding fractions. So let's say we're adding, let's go for 1/5. 1/5. Alright, 2/7 plus 1/5. Well, if you've forgotten how to do this, look at the instructions. So the first step is make sure both denominators are the same. We know denominators refers to the bottom number, the 7 and the 5. They need to be the same. We can't add them if they're not the same. Okay? At the moment we've got 7 and 5. Now how do we make them the same? Well, we find a number that both 7 and 5 go into, that they're both factors of. Okay, so we need to think of a number that both 7 and 5 can both go into, that they're both factors of. Alright, now the best way to do this is to start with our larger number, so 7, and write out the first few numbers of its timetable. So 7, 14, 21, I usually do about 5, 28, 35. If you need to do more, then do more, okay? So I've written out the first 5. Now I'm going to write out the 5 times table to see if there are any numbers that appear in both of them. Or do I need to do that? I don't think I need to do that because our knowledge of the 5 times table should be at such a level now where we know that any multiple of 5 must end with 5 or 0. 5, 10, 15, 20. So if you look, we know that 7, 14, 21 and 28 can't be in the 5 times table. They don't end with 5 or 0. 35 must be in the 5 times table. That means that the lowest common multiple of 7 and 5 is 35. Okay? So what I'm going to do is rewrite both these fractions so they've got 35 at the bottom as the denominator. Okay? So let's rewrite this one first. I'm going to rewrite it directly underneath. So let's put 35 at the bottom. I'm going to leave the top alone for a second. Then we're going to add. And now I'm going to rewrite this one beneath it with 35 at the bottom. Alright, now let's move on to step 2. Multiply the numerators by the same number as the denominator has been multiplied by. It might sound a bit wordy and tricky, but it's not. Watch this, right? All we're doing is we're asking ourselves, what did I have to multiply 7 by to get to 35? 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. 5. I had to multiply 7 by 5 to get to 35. Which means I've got to do the same to the top. Same to the numerator. Okay, I multiplied the bottom by 5. I must multiply the top by 5. So 2 multiplied by 5 gives me 10. And that's its new numerator. Let's do the same over here. So what did I multiply 5 by to get to 35? I had to multiply 5 by 7. 5 times 7 is 35. Because I multiplied the bottom number by 7, I must multiply the top number, the numerator, by 7. So what's 1 times 7? Of course the answer is 7. Now look what we're left with at the bottom. We are left with 10 over 35 plus 7 over 35. When the denominators are the same, all we do is add the numerators. Okay, so 10 plus 7 equals 17. And that's it. We keep the denominator exactly the same. Our answer is 17 over 35. Okay, now today we're not going to focus on simplifying any of our fractions or changing any improper fractions into mixed number fractions. We're just going to focus again on an answer, the first answer we get. If you can simplify, that's amazing, that's brilliant. If you can change to mixed number fractions, perfect, do that. But if you can't, don't worry about it too much. Let's just focus on making sure we know how to add, subtract, multiply and divide, okay? And then we'll be going into simplifying. We'll be reminding ourselves how to simplify and convert very soon. Okay, let's talk about subtracting fractions. Let's change it up. So let's now go for 5, 6, and let's subtract a quarter, 1 over 4. Okay, now some people say that rather than finding a number that both 6 and 4 go into, what you can do is just multiply them together and then you'll get a number that they both go into, obviously. Because if you do 6 times 4, we get 24, and 6 and 4 both go into 24. So we can use the number 24, but the only issue with that is it isn't the lowest common multiple. There is a lower number that they both go into, okay? So that's why we should try to use the other method, okay? Which is this one. We start off with the largest times table. So we've got 6 and 4. We're going to find a number that both of them go into. So let's start with the 6 times table. We've got 6, 12, 18, 24, 30. Let's stop there. All right, now we've got the 4 times table. So I'm going to look at these numbers and see if 4 goes into any of them, or I can just write the 4 times table out. 4, 8, 12, and have a look. We've got 12 in both times tables. It's the lowest common multiple. That means I'm going to change both of those fractions to have a 12 denominator, okay? So let's do that. Let's rewrite the first fraction and put 12 at the bottom. Let's rewrite the second fraction and put 12 at the bottom. So all I've done is rewrite this one and rewrite this one, and I put my subtraction sign in the middle. All right, remember next step. We need to multiply the numerator by the same number that the denominator has been multiplied by. So what did we multiply 6 by to get to 12? We had to multiply it by 2. So I need to do the same to the top. 5 times 2 is 10. What did I multiply 4 by to get to 12? 3. Do the same to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. And look what we are left with. We're left with 10 over 12, subtract 3 over 12. And we know that when our denominators are the same, we can just subtract the numerators, okay? So 10 subtract 3 equals 7, and the 12 remains the same. So the answer is 7 over 12. All right. Let's move on. Let's clear the screen. All right, so we're now moving on to, I might be in the way here. Let me hide my camera. All right, we're now moving on to multiplying fractions. And of course, multiplying fractions is the easiest thing you can do in fractions. Very, very, very easy, okay? So let's say we've got 3/5 and we want to multiply it by 2 over 9. Okay, step 1, multiply the numerators. So 3 times 2 equals 6. Step 2, multiply the denominators. 5 times 9 is 45. We are done. Simple as that. There's nothing else to it, okay? When we multiply fractions, we just multiply across and we are done. So we're done with that one. Let's move on to division, which is almost as easy as multiply. A little bit trickier, but definitely easier than add and subtract. So to divide fractions, first of all, let's write our question. So let's go for 4/5, and let's say we want to divide it by 1/3. Okay, how to divide fractions. First step, keep, change, flip. We need to remember that motto, okay? KCF, keep, change, flip. And what that means is we keep the first fraction exactly how it is. So I'm going to rewrite it over here. 4 over 5. Next step, we change the division into a multiplication. It becomes a multiply. And final step is flip. The next fraction, 1 over 3, flips upside down. So 3 and 1 swap places. So it becomes 3 over 1. Now, we are left with this question at the top. And we know how to multiply, don't we? We just did it a minute ago. 4 times 3 is 12. 5 times 1 is 5. So the answer is 12 over 5. Okay. Well done if you know that this answer is the same as this, 2 and 2/5. Alright, well done guys. So, if you have forgotten how to do any of those, adding, subtracting, dividing or multiplying those fractions, on the left, the instructions have been left on the screen for you. Okay, so have a look at this task. Your task is, can you solve those 8 questions? There are 2 addition, 2 subtraction, 2 multiplication, and 2 division questions. If you get stuck, just have a look at the steps. Okay, we do need to know how to do this. We must know how to do this. Okay, so practice as many times as it takes. Also, remember when you're finished, especially if you're feeling a little bit frustrated by them, do some more. Make some questions up all by yourself, okay? Write a couple of fractions out. So for example, you might want to do, let me give you an example. Grab a piece of paper, we want to write 4/5, something like that. It doesn't matter what's at the top or what's at the bottom. Maybe if you're practicing, keep them both to be single digits at first. And we want to add 2 random numbers. Let's go for 3 over 7. That's all you need to do. Create it on the spot. Make up some fractions on the spot. You can't go wrong making up these questions. Apart from if you are subtracting fractions, if you're making up questions and you want to practice subtracting, you've got to make sure your first fraction is larger than your second fraction. Okay, otherwise it won't work. But you can practice addition, multiplication, and division by writing literally any fractions you'd like. All right, so make sure you do that. So there's task 1. Let's move on. Vocabulary. Okay, so let's look at some words that often find their ways into 11 plus exams. So we've got 5 words on the left. We've got abundant, adjacent, authentic, dedicate, and efficient. And on the right hand side, we've got a very, very brief definition of those words. But they've all been mixed up. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is pause the video and have a go at linking them. This is not part of the homework, this is something we can do right now. So pause the video, have a go at linking them, and then press play to see if you were correct. Okay, so the first word, abundant. Where should I be linking that? Abundant means many or more than enough. Then we've got adjacent, and adjacent means next to or close to. Then we've got authentic, and authentic means real, genuine. Then we've got dedicate. Dedicate means to give your time and effort to something. And then finally, we have got efficient, and efficient means saving time and or energy. Okay, so if you've got all of those correct, these are 5 important words. We need to know what they mean, okay? And also need to know how they're spelt too. And of course, we'll be looking at even more words as the weeks go on. Okay. So here's your next task. This is part of the homework, this bit, okay? So what we've got is we've got a text. I'll read the text, but I'm going to leave out the blanks, okay? And you need to decide which word does not belong in the text below. Let me explain what I mean, okay? So I'm going to read it. As he stepped into his new classroom for the first time, he couldn't help feel a little nervous. Dozens of unfamiliar faces stared back at him. Okay, class, demanded the teacher, I'd like you to meet your new classmate. As he stepped apprehensively to the front of the classroom, he admired the walls of the classroom. Blank to the whiteboard was an eye-catching rewards chart, blank with colourful stars and sparkling gems that appeared blank. It was clear that this was the type of teacher who would blank much of his time for the betterment of his students. So, there's a very, very short paragraph of writing. It's a story, and there are 4 blanks, and 4 of these words belong in those blanks. Okay, so you need to read for context and decide which words fit in those spaces. You need to decide which of these words doesn't belong in the text, because 4 of them do, 1 of them doesn't. Okay, so that's your second task, to fill in the blanks, work out which word doesn't belong in the text. And then when you've figured out the word that doesn't belong in the text, the next task is use the word that hasn't yet been used to write the next sentence for this story. All right, so let me make that clear. Task 2 is to fill in these blanks and to decide which word hasn't been used. And the word that hasn't been used should be used to write the next sentence for this story. Okay, thank you very much for watching, guys. And remember, vocabulary is very important. So if you did struggle with the vocabulary today and didn't know what any of the words meant, make sure you look them up in a dictionary, write some words with them, use them in real life conversations. And the more you do stuff like that, the easier they'll become.